Picture this, it's 1980 and Black Sabbath just did the impossible. They fired their frontman, brought in a singer who just left Rainbow, and instead of collapsing, they released Heaven and Hell, an album so good it silenced anyone who said Sabbath died with Ozzy. So now what? You pulled off the greatest reinvention in metal history. Do you dare try it twice? Do you top yourself? Or do you fall apart trying? That's the question hanging over every second of Mob Rules. And the wild part is, the band didn't even get a clean shot at answering it, because right in the middle of touring their comeback album, they lost another founding member. This is the story of how Black Sabbath survived losing Bill Ward, found a drummer in the unlikeliest way possible, and recorded an album under pressure, under the influence, and under the shadow of their own success. Let's start with a drummer, because this is one of my favorite right place, right time stories in rock history. Bill Ward left the band mid-tour in 1980. He was dealing with addiction. He just lost both of his parents in a short span of time. By his own account, he was mentally overburdened and just couldn't continue. The band was riding the momentum of Heaven and Hell and Dio's arrival, and they genuinely couldn't afford to stop. So Tony Iommi went looking for a replacement, and he found one in the unlikeliest way, through a record. Iommi was in LA and he heard an album by a band called Axis, and he was blown away by the drum sound on it. That drummer was Vinny Appice. Iommi tracked him down, walked into a hotel room with the Axis record under his arm, and basically said, "This is what I want." No formal audition process, no long search, just a guy who heard a sound he liked on a record and went and found the human being who made it. Here's a twist. Appice had actually turned down a gig 2 months earlier. Sharon Osbourne had reached out to him for joining Ozzy's new band, the one that would become Blizzard of Oz. Appice talked it over with his brother Carmine, who warned him of Ozzy having a reputation for being, in his words, crazy, and Appice passed. So the drummer who said no to Ozzy and yes to Sabbath, instead, when he finally sat down with the band in the Hollywood rehearsal space, first song they played together was Neon Nights, a song Appice had literally just heard on the radios days earlier. They were so locked in immediately that the whole band went to a pub to celebrate and invited him to join on the spot. He had 4 days, just 4 days, to learn the entire live set before his first show at Aloha Stadium in Hawaii. And he was only supposed to be temporary, a placeholder until Bill comes back. But Bill never came back, and Appice cemented a spot for good when the band recorded a one-off single for the animated movie Heavy Metal, the title track, The Mob Rules. It was recorded at Tittenhurst Park, the old Lennon estate. They knocked it out in 2 days and knew immediately they had something. That session became the spark for the whole album. Now let's talk about how the record actually came together, because it's a completely different process from Heaven and Hell. That album was written quietly in a living room on small amps. Mob Rules was written loud. Dio himself said that directly. The band set up in a rented house in Toluca Lake, California, and instead of coming in with finished songs, they just jammed every day. Vinny Appice was put in charge of running a cassette recorder during these jam sessions, and afterward they'd all sit around and listen back to the tapes, picking out the riffs, usually from Iommi, that were worth chasing further. It was a loose, live wire way to write an album, and you can hear that raw energy baked into the final product. They actually bought their own sound desk to try to record the whole thing at home and save some money, but the guitar tone wasn't working in a house full of hallways and hard surfaces, so they ended up moving to the record plant in Los Angeles. Martin Birch came back to produce, same as he had on the previous record, but Iommi had been candid in later interviews that both the band and Birch were dealing with serious drug problems during the period, and he thinks it affected the production. They tracked most of it live in the studio with no click track, chasing the same energy from the jam sessions. And it wasn't just chemical pressure, there was real tension inside the band. On Heaven and Hell, Iommi and Dio had since lived written as a duo, with Dio taking over lyric duties. For Mob Rules, Geezer Butler was back in the fold and wanted his old job as lyricist back. The compromise, Dio kept the lyrics, Butler got co-writing credit on the music, and the fact that they were trying to follow up with the most successful album of the Dio era, you've got a band writing under real pressure. Dio even admitted Turn Up the Night was a subconscious attempt to write another Neon Nights, and Voodoo was meant to be his answer to Children of the Sea. I want to zoom in on one song specifically because it's the most divisive track on the record, Country Girl. Iommi and Butler flat out did not want the song on the album at first. Iommi said it felt like a weird thing to sing about for a band known for War Pigs and Iron Man. Dio wrote the lyrics for his wife Wendy while the band was working at the record plant in New York. And when the guys pushed back on the lovey-dovey feel of it, Dio just shrugged and said, "What's wrong with it?" And honestly, he wasn't wrong to stand his ground. The song opens with one of Iommi's heaviest, most sinister riffs on the whole album. Then drops into this eerie melodic bridge that catches you off guard in the best way. Critics have been split for decades. Some call it a sign of a mid-album fatigue. Others call it an underrated deep cut, a masterclass in groove with generally brilliant structural shift in the middle. For what it's worth, everyone in the band eventually came around to it, except Bill Ward, who reportedly never liked it even after he left the group. Quick trip through the rest of the record. Side 1, Turn Up the Night, is a fast radio-friendly headbanger, though Dio himself only called it all right. Voodoo is a mid-paced stomp with some Iommi's best discordant soloing. Sound of Southern Cross is the emotional and musical peak of the album, an acoustic intro exploding into doom with Geezer Butler calling it his personal favorite. E5150 is a short, eerie instrumental interlude, and the joke is actually in the numeral joke. 5150 in Roman numerals spells the VIL, and the extra E spells evil. And then the title track closes side 1. Side 2 is Country Girl, which I just talked about. Then Slipping Away is a groovier, more Zeppelin-flavored track thrown together quickly late in the sessions. Falling Off the Edge of the World is a genuine epic. Has synths that sound like electric violin and full-speed collapse into heaviness. And Dio called it a personal highlight. And closes with Over and Over, a slow blues metal burner that mirrors the vibe of Lonely is the Word from the last album. And it's the only song on the record that never made it into the live set. Now, I need to talk about the album cover because there's a whole story behind this. So the image is not original art commissioned by the band. It's a licensed 1974 painting by Greg Hildebrand called Dream 1, The Crucifiers. Born straight out of a nightmare he had during a period of real personal turmoil tied to his work documenting poverty and his disillusionment with organized religion. The band's management found it in an art book and licensed it. They made a few sneaky changes with an overlay, a hook became a cross, a blood stain became a demon's skull, and the band's name got printed onto the wall to make it look like it belonged there. And yes, there's a persistent urban legend that Hildebrand hid the words "Kill Ozzy" somewhere in the shadows of a shot of a former singer. He denied it flatly. He says he didn't even know who Ozzy Osbourne was at the time, and that fans are just reading patterns into random paint strokes. Despite the cover going on to being voted the greatest heavy metal album cover of all time, Hildebrand has never even seen a dime in royalties. His contract was lost after a break-in at his office a few years later. He still owns the original painting. He won't sell it. It's too personal. So that's Mob Rules, the band writing at full volume under real internal strain, somehow still landing one of the most respected records in the catalog. But the Sabbath story doesn't end clean there either, because a few years down the road, Ronnie James Dio will leave the band, take the drummer with him, and start an entirely new band, leaving Tony Iommi to look for a new singer, who is someone we know very well from the series. The next few episodes will cover the other bands, talking about Rainbow, Whitesnake, Gillan. Then I'm going to circle back to Black Sabbath, and you're going to see all of this connects. I'm going to leave Ronnie James Dio alone for now because I could do his other band, but it's going to be too much for this series. So maybe I'll revisit that in the future. But anyway, check out the playlist. It should be appearing on the screen right now. Thanks for watching. And like and subscribe and follow. I still have more to come, so I'm going to be talking more. Eventually, Deep Purple will be reunited. Right now, I'm in 1981, but 1984 is around the corner, so stick around, more to come.